live stream. I am Alice of KHR Arts, and tonight we are drawing. Yay! I am so excited, y'all. It is a brand new drawing today. We have this beautiful fantasy forest scene that I created for y'all, and we are going to draw it together, and it's going to be so beautiful. I am so excited, y'all. I cannot wait to get started. So let's jump right in, shall we? Alrighty, so for those of y'all who are new here, I am a digital artist. I also do paintings too, but I don't really have the space right now to do my paintings. So we do digital art here. This is my Wacom tablet, which I use to be able to draw on the computer. And I have put together this fantastic line art so that all of the, just structure of the drawing is already figured out because that part is such a headache. Not as much fun to watch. It's a lot, y'all. So we are doing the fun part, which is coloring. So let's get started with that. Ooh, I like that. We're going to start off with that. That's going to be a good color. Okay, so basically what we have going on here is we have this gorgeous, gnarly tree. Y'all know I love me some very gnarly, old, ancient, twisty trees. And we've got a satyr with his flute. I decided I wanted to do a straight flute rather than a pan flute. I thought this would be cute. And I did a dryad here. And oh my god, I can't for the life of me remember what this is called, but it's this obscure mythological creature where it's this concept of a plant that acts as like kind of an umbilical cord for a sheep. And if the sheep is separated from the plant, it'll die. So that's what that is. I can't remember what it's called though. It's like lamb something if y'all want to look it up. But I thought it was cute, so I drew it. You know what? I think I like this brown as a mid-tone. So I'm going to do that. And oh, you know what? You know what would help? See if we got our color palette going. That would probably be helpful. And what that is, as some people affectionately like to call them, they are my color balloons. And I just keep all of the different colors that I'm using so that I don't lose track of them. I have been super crazy busy today, y'all. It has been a very busy day doing all my work, and I am very pleased to announce that I officially completed and submitted my latest submission today. So, yay to that. It's basically there is this writing contest through Voyage Literary Magazine, and it's you submit one page from an unpublished novel that you're working on or have finished, whichever. They said that it didn't matter. And if you're selected, you win a cash prize and you also win workshopping with a well-known author. And I know that I had some time to spare with that, but I really just wanted to get the submission done and off my plate. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that today because my to-do list, y'all, is just never ending. So anything that I can get off the to-do list is a win for me. So I am an author by trade. That is like my main job thing that I got going on. I write books for a living. And a big part of my thing is that I have this big database of writing, basically. So I just have been writing for such a large portion of my life that I just have like so many different stories and so many different states of progress. Some are like 80% complete, some are like 50% complete, some are only like 10% complete. Like it's a lot of different stuff in a lot of different stages. And basically what I do once I finish a project, whether it's a full-blown novel or it's like a poetry collection or whatever, I just go into my database and I'm like, okay, what are we working on next? That's kind of what I do. And every once in a while, I have all these different publishers and magazines and all that kind of stuff that I'm on like the mailing list for. So I check my emails every day. And if there's some sort of contest or like a submission window opens or whatever, I'll look at what I already have and see if anything applies. It's kind of like the idea of work smarter, not harder. The less work I have to do, the better. And in this case, I brought out this old trilogy that I haven't worked on in a million years. And I made a post on my social media the other day. It was pretty funny about how, like, when you read your old writing, make this goofy face because it's so bad. I mean, that's kind of like what it was when I dragged out this manuscript. I was like, oh, I wrote that. Oh my God. The story is great. The story itself is a really great idea. It's just the execution was just like, "Rrr." And a big part of that is because the manuscript is like 15 years old. So there you go. When you haven't worked on a manuscript in 15 years and you go back to it, the writing is going to look like, "Grr," to you. At least I hope so, because that means you're improving as a writer. And even though it was a one-page sort of submission thing, and a lot of like off the bat submissions are like that, where they only want you to submit one page or one chapter or whatever. It's usually very, very short. They expect you to have far more than just that done. I was kind of going through it and rewriting the first chapter to just kind of get an idea for the overall voice of the story and how I wanted to present that. So even though I only needed to submit one page, I went and I edited the first chapter. Really wanted to make sure that it was very strong, because oftentimes when you're writing your story, what you initially write as the first page very often is scrapped. Usually that's like the opener of your book. It's like the most important page, like the two most important pages of your book are the first page and the last page. Those are the most important. They're the ones that get sometimes rewritten the most because they have to have the biggest impact. I needed to make sure that I did far more than just go over the first page and be like, okay, I rewrote it, I'm done. Like, no. Way more work has to go into that. So that's what I have been working on the past week, and I'm just so glad that I was able to get that submitted and get it off my plate, and early too. Oh my God, y'all, my life is just so chaotically busy. I always have so much going on, and I'm all about those achievement points. The more stuff I can achieve and get off my to-do list, the happier I am. That's really kind of how I function. I've basically trained myself where I have this app on my phone for my to-do list, and whenever I like cross stuff off, aka tap the little button, the little checklist button, it makes this lovely little ding noise, and now my brain has like 100% associated that little ding noise with hooray, you did a thing. So now I get really happy whenever I push that button and hear the ding. Like, yay, you did a thing. It is done. It is completed. Hooray. We all need every bit of joy that we can find, truly. What I am doing right now is I am doing the color line art. And for those of y'all who are new here, the reason why I don't do this in advance, the reason why I do the baseline art first and then I kind of trace over it like this, is because I don't always know what colors I want to use. And sometimes I do end up going over it again with another color during the shading process. It's just part of my personal process. It's just kind of the way that I do it. I don't plan out the colors this much in advance just because I'm likely to change what I want to do anyway, and so it would be a colossal waste of time for me to like plan it all out and then suddenly decide that I want it to be a different color, or suddenly discover that like I've messed up and oh my God, this has to be a totally different color. That's why I do it this way. This is just my personal process. This is how it works. So the program that I'm using is called SAI, SAI. It's a digital drawing program, and it has a lot of other tools too that allow you to do different materials. So, like crayon, ballpoint pen, watercolor, acrylic, and it mimics these other materials fairly well. So, you can get different kinds of textures and stuff like that. And it's basically just like a really, really simple program. I do also have Photoshop, but I prefer to draw my drawings first in Sai, and then if I have to do any sort of like special effects to my art, then I take it over to Photoshop after I've already drawn it. I don't know. I don't like drawing my drawings first in Photoshop. I don't really like the controls. in Photoshop in terms of drawing, as well as it kind of is overwhelming having that many options for tools when I'm just starting off just with something like this where I'm just doing a drawing. I'm not doing some like super complicated like digital art piece. I always love getting my hair done. It's always such a fun day when I get my hair done. Especially because for me, it's like a whole thing, y'all, because I'm wearing a wig. This is my wig that I wear when, I mean, like not tonight, but like sometimes when I'm like out and about and I'm like being lazy and I don't want to like worry about styling my hair, I'll sometimes wear this wig because it actually looks exactly like my natural hair, except for it's basically like chest length, whereas my hair, like my natural hair, is like about 4 feet long now. And I'm not even exaggerating. It's like I can sit on it now. It's a problem. So when I go to the hair salon, it takes a very long time. The hairstylist typically books me near the end of the day. She doesn't have any more clients after me, and it just takes however long it takes because it takes a long, long time. And this is where the line art gets a little bit complicated because I want to have other colors in here for where, as you can see, the dryad is. So I don't want to just draw all of her to blend in with the tree. I only want some of her to blend into the tree. So I'm kind of trying to pick and choose where those lines are going to be on here. And trees are so weird to draw. Like they look very weird and blobby and like they've got all these like wonky weird spider leg things going on, but then once you like finish drawing it and you zoom out, it all just comes together. It's very odd. Trees are one of those things that are just very weird to draw. Same with hands. Hands are very hard to draw. While I'm drawing them, I always feel like, is this what hands look like? What even are hands? It's a mystery. I don't know. All right, I want to color in the tree a little bit here. I think that would be fun to do. And because of the way I drew the tree, we kind of have to do like a manual coloring of the tree. So that will take a bit of a hot minute. That's okay. This is turning out pretty well, y'all. This is looking good. Just kind of getting a feel for these colors. And this is what I do sometimes on pieces is I'll like start to partially color stuff like this, and it just helps me get an idea for what I'm doing so that it'll help me like select what colors I want to move on with next. It's a process, y'all. A big part of my life growing up was being on swim team. I was a swimmer from 9 years old to 19 years old. And before that, I took swimming lessons from when I was 3 until I was about 9. It was basically, I took swim lessons until they were like, yeah, there's really nothing else we can do for her. You should sign her up for swim team. So that's what my parents did. And I loved it, y'all. I originally got into swimming because, as I've said in the past, The Little Mermaid was my favorite movie growing up. Like, I wore out that VHS watching it so many times. And I actually knew how to work the VCR from a very young age. My parents were very motivated to teach me how to do that so that they were able to sleep in on the weekends because I would actually frequently go downstairs, put The Little Mermaid in, and watch that a couple times until my parents were awake and like started their day. So I'm sure they really appreciated that. Yeah, I wanted to be a mermaid when I was really little, and when my parents would like take me to the beach and stuff, like, I was all about swimming in the water and I loved going to the pool and just all that stuff. So they started me on swim lessons so that it could be safe and also because I was just so obsessed with being in the pool all the time. And then I got on swim team. And swim team basically took over a huge part of my life growing up. I started on a private swim team, so it was basically like a local community swim team. It wasn't through school. And I did that. And then there was a swim team through my junior high, but we didn't swim because the junior high didn't have a pool. We had to go to like a pool somewhere else. I don't really remember too well because there's big chunks of my memory that are missing from that time period. But I was on the school swim team in junior high. So I did that in addition to doing the local community swim team. And that was like a fall winter swim team. And then a couple years in, my parents also discovered a summer swim team that was separate from the other community swim team. So basically, like I had these three different swim teams going on. So I was basically swimming year round. Like I usually only had like a few weeks off during the year from swim teams. So it really consumed that much of my life. I've just that's why like I tell y'all like my life has always been like this where I'm just super crazy busy all the time. I literally don't know what life is like in terms of like not being busy. I have no idea what that feels like. My life has always been like this. So typically during the like fall and winter, that particular swim team, it took place in the evening, I think around something like 5 o'clock or something like that. So I did have time to like come home and like eat and like watch some TV and do a little bit of homework and stuff before I had to go to swim practice. And I don't remember how long swim practice was for. I think it was for like an hour and a half or 2 hours or something like that. So it was, it was pretty intense growing up as a kid doing that and then coming home and eating again and then doing my homework and working on my writing and my art for the night and all that kind of stuff. So I was just always really, really super busy. And my schedule was always so jam packed because then on the weekends, I had the swim meets, which is the competitive part where you actually compete against other teams and stuff. So I was just super, super busy with that. And it was like a big part of my life also in that a lot of people don't know this, but there's like a whole like culture with swim team. Like it's a whole thing. Obviously, I don't know what aspects of it have changed today because I stopped swimming when I was 19 years old and I'm 34 now. So you do the math. I've been out of the game for that long. So I don't know, but this is how it was back in my day. For the winter fall swim team, obviously that was indoors because otherwise we would have froze to death. And so the big, big thing was claiming your territory with a giant blanket or towel. And this is at the swim meets. And what that meant was because the swim meets were kind of like an all day thing. And so you're at the pool like all day, but you're only competing at about like 3 or 4 events, like max. You're really not allowed to do more than like 3 or 4 individual events. And then depending on how good you are, you might also do some of the relays. So that's where there's 4 swimmers competing together in order to win the events. So you might have those on top of your individual events, but you really weren't allowed to have more than like 4 individual events by yourself. There's tons of events, and because it's a community-based swim team, there's multiple age groups. There's like the 9, 10 year olds, the 10, 11 year olds, all the way up to 18. And there are some 19 year olds on the team because of their birthday, when your birthday was when the cutoff was for being able to participate and stuff. It wasn't like, oh, in the middle of the season you turn 19, GTFO. Like, no, that's not how that works. You're there like all day because there's all of the events you're not participating in, and then there's all the age groups that you're not a part of that you have to wait through. So there's a lot of waiting with being at a swim meet. And so a big part of that was like hanging out with the other kids on swim team that you're friends with and like claiming a little space for you all to hang out together. And so claiming that area that was yours was like a big, big deal. And like the older kids would always get mad at the younger kids if they were like running across their stuff or messing with their stuff and all that. Like it was very much like chain of command sort of thing. The older you were, the more respect you could command and boss people around and all that sort of stuff. Basically, kind of like playground rules. And at the time is when Pokemon was like super, super popular. And Pokemon is still popular, but this is back when it was the original games. Red and blue were still a major thing. So everybody had their Game Boys and were playing Pokemon and other Game Boy games, and people brought their toys, and people brought their, this is gonna show how old I am, our CD players. So we could all listen to music together and all that stuff. Like that was a very big deal. And it was so much fun. It was kind of like a little party. And then we'd have to go do our events and then come back and catch our breath and then get back to the party and all that stuff. So it was a very social thing. One of the traditions, this is back when I did it, I don't know if this is still a thing, but on the community swim teams, the school swim teams have different rules, but on the community swim teams, we would all take permanent marker and we would write our events on our hands. You would see, if you wanted to see what somebody's event was, all you had to do was look at their hands, and they had it all written out for like all the stuff that they had, and you had like the number, because each event had its own number, 1 through whatever, so that you could listen to the announcements and know, oh, they're on event 52. My next event isn't until 64 or something. That's how we all kept track of that stuff, so that you knew what you needed to do next and where you needed to be and stuff. A lot of times we would also show like team spirit and stuff by drawing on each other's backs with permanent marker too. So that was a big deal. During one of my swim meets, actually, a bunch of the girls in the younger age groups drew on their backs, like for in honor of me, because they were so excited about the events that I was doing. And I'll get to that in a minute because that's a pretty fab story too. So it became obvious once I got older that I was not built for speed. There's basically two kinds of swimmers on swim team. There are those that are built for speed and those that are built for endurance. And it becomes pretty apparent which category you're in fairly quickly. Once you're about 12 years old, 12, 13 years old, that's around when it becomes obvious which side of the coin you're going to be on. That really determines like how they're going to have you train and like what events you're going to be consistently put in. And my little brother, Night Shot 333, was also on swim team, just like me, and he was built for speed. He was a sprinter, so he was so fast, y'all. Oh my god, ridiculously fast. He was just like a torpedo in the water. Whereas I was built for endurance. I could swim forever. I probably still can. Obviously, not as well as I used to. I'm very out of shape. I will admit that. I am very out of shape. But I'm pretty sure if you threw me in a pool, I'd do pretty okay. And so I built my way up to suddenly at about fit. By the time I was about 15 years old, I was the tank. Like that's who I was on the team. I wasn't just an endurance swimmer, I was the tank. I was doing the heavy duty events that nobody wants to do, because I was good at them and I liked doing them. I liked that nobody wanted to do them. I liked that they were hard. I liked that the people that showed up to compete against me in those events were just as scary as me. Those were the events that like people would freak out if their coach forced them to do them. They're like, no, I don't want to do it. Oh my God. And for those of y'all that are like, what are these horrible events? Oh my God. They're the longest, hardest events, like the 200 butterfly. So that event is all upper body strength. Butterfly is the one where you bring your arms up straight over your head and you're literally lifting your entire torso up out of the water, kind of like a dolphin, like this. But you're just using like all of your upper body strength to basically drag your body through the water, and then your legs, because you naturally, do the dolphin dive sort of motion with your body. Your legs are like, you have your feet fused together, kind of like a fin, and they like slam into the water to like propel you. And it's the most powerful stroke. The absolute most powerful one, the most difficult one, like in terms of technicality. So there are actually judges that will like stand next to the pool. And if you do certain things wrong, you'll be disqualified from the event. So it's not just about winning and being fast, it's also you have to be technically correct. So if you're not doing the stroke right, you can be disqualified, and it doesn't matter how fast you are if you're not doing it right. And I was like the best at doing fly. I was like the best at it. I can't do it anymore, unfortunately, because I've dislocated my shoulders so many times that I'm pretty sure it would be super dangerous for me to do it. But I used to be just amazing at that event, y'all. And so imagine that. I'm doing the most difficult stroke that nobody likes doing. And oh, by the way, I'm going to do the longest event for it, 200 yards. That's 8 pool lengths. To give you some reference to, how much that actually is. That's 8 pool lengths. On average, most people only do the 100 fly, which is 4 pool lengths. So I would do twice as much as the average person for the individual events. And I rocked at it, y'all. I was the best. And people did not like going up against me, let me tell you. So, back to that part about drawing on each other's backs with permanent marker. So there was a lot of times at these sort of events when I would get called in to do the big events like the 200 fly, and they would actually have to combine the events where I would have to compete against the guys. They would only have like 1 or 2 people up on the blocks competing because they just don't have enough people willing to do the event. So there were a lot of times I went up against guys that were bigger than me and I kicked their they did not like that. And so there was this one event. It was at this pool that was our known rivals. And competition was very fierce, and everybody was drawing on each other's backs for team spirit. And when it got announced that my event was going to be combined and it was going to be just me, I was 15, and this guy who was 16, it was just going to be us doing the 200 fly. And our team just freaked out. We're so excited. And like all the girls in the 9-10 age group drew on each other's backs. They drew little wings on their backs and they were just all lined up on the pool, just screaming their heads off, like cheering me on. Oh my God, it was balls to the wall crazy, y'all. It was so magnificent. And I kicked his he was not pleased. It was spectacular, y'all. But of course, every once in a while I got put in the like sprint races, so like the 50-yard freestyle, which is the easiest stroke and it's the fastest stroke. And 50 yards is only 2 pool lengths. And to give you all an idea of how I am not built for speed, breaking a 30, which means doing the 50 freestyle in under 30 seconds, is like something that's just expected of you by the time you're in the like 15-18 age group, that like breaking a 30 should not be a thing, like kind of expected of you. But for me, because I was just such a giant hulking terror and not built for speed, it was really, really hard for me to finally get that achievement. I think I was like 17 when I finally broke a 30. And the biggest trick behind being able to break a 30 is you actually have to swim the entire 50 yards without breathing. So that's one of the big things with speed. It's going to give you an advantage is the less you have to breathe, the faster you're going to go. Because when you have to stop to breathe, I mean, you don't really actually like stop physically, but you have to like break your stride. With 50, you're like, doing it over like this. And then when you breathe, you have to like turn on your side to get your head out of the water. It, kind of briefly for like that little millisecond pauses you. And that eats up that precious time. And so it took me a while to be able to get fast enough where I physically could do the full 50 yards without breathing. So that was my big challenge. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure my brother broke a 30 back when he was like, I don't know, probably like 12 or 13 or some crazy nonsense. I remember he did it when he was like really, really young and I like still couldn't do it. So yeah, it was very obvious that he was built for speed. Yeah, I was not. In terms of, can you swim forever? Oh, yes, I can. Oh, I can swim forever. I am your worst nightmare. And one of the big ones with that was I swam the mile once. Now, talk about a particular event nobody wants to do. Nobody wants to do the mile. I didn't want to do the mile just because it's a lot. I don't remember how many laps it is, but it's a lot. And the main reason is not even because of how long it is, because like most people get to a certain point where they're just so exhausted that they just don't care anymore. And they're basically just like, ah. It's the flip turns. It's the flip turns that kill you. So when you're doing the 50 free, how you do the exchange with, going from here's the wall and bouncing off of it, to continue swimming. 50 free, you do a flip turn. So you literally like do a forward somersault underwater and then you push off the wall with your feet. And that's the other trick to being a sprinter, is getting that flip turn as fast and clean as you can. Just like absolutely explode off that wall. But in terms of being a tank, the flip turn is also important because you want to be able to go without breathing as long as you can going off that wall. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's because there's this part called the streamline that you do when you push off the wall after your flip turn before you break the surface of the water again in order to keep swimming. So that's where you get to rest, is after the flip turn during the streamline. And you want to be able to streamline for as long as you can while still going fast and keeping momentum and all that stuff. But that being able to do that longer means that you're going to have a better chance of having more energy by the final sprint than everybody else. And I was good at that, y'all, because I could like hold my breath forever. I could hold my breath for like ever. My lung capacity used to be absolutely insane, y'all. Like I could hold my breath for literally 2 minutes. Like I sat there and I timed it once and it was for like 2 minutes. And so doing that many flip turns, so let's say 50 pool lengths, that's about like 48 flip turns, because there's the pool length where you go straight down and then there's the pool length where you go straight back where you're not doing a flip turn on those. That's 48 forward somersaults. You're gonna get dizzy. Like, it is a known thing that most people swimming the mile throw up afterward because they're so dizzy. I was dizzy after I did the mile, but the biggest thing that sucked was my goggles filled up with water from doing so many flip turns. So at one point when I was swimming, I was literally blind. I couldn't see. I was just like, I'm just gonna trust that my body knows where the wall is. And I'm just gonna keep swimming even though I can't see where I'm going. Like, it got to that point. Like, swimming the mile, it gets to that point where you just literally don't care about anything anymore. Your body is just moving automatically, and you're just like, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And you have people counting for you because there's no way you can keep track of all of those laps. So there are people that are assigned to you to count for you. And how they do it is they have these little plastic board things. And again, I don't know how much things have changed between now and then. But back then, we had these little plastic board counters, and they had these little flaps that you would like change them out. It had different numbers so that you knew which lap you were on. Most swimmers, though, would completely ignore the numbers. All they cared about was when the board was red. So when it's that final flip turn, that's when you do your sprint. When you see red, because they would put it against the wall where you're going to do your flip turn so that you can see what lap you're on. And on your final lap, the board's just red. It's just solid red, no numbers, because you don't care at that point. Your brain is like, numbers? What are numbers? And the red means it's time to go. It's time to sprint. And when you see that red, your brain just wakes up and it's like, oh, it's go time. Okay. And that's what happened to me every time. Is it didn't matter how tired I was. It didn't matter how drowned I was. It didn't matter if I couldn't see. I could still see that red. And I was just like, all right, I got this. Ah. And that's when you just haul and you just find energy you didn't even know you had, and you just kick it into high gear, and you're like, I just need to beat whoever is in the lane next to me because that's all my brain can register at this point. And yeah, it was nuts. I definitely got to that point with the mile where I didn't even know, like, I'm like, numbers, what are numbers? I don't know. And I finally saw that red and I was like, oh, hallelujah, I'm done. I'm finally done with this. And I got out of that water, and a couple of people who got out of the water after me definitely threw up. I did not. I did not throw up. I was very proud of myself. It was rough though. It was really rough, but I did it. And I did really good at it too. But I was glad coach never made me do it again. I was like, please don't ever do that to me again. That was brutal. No, thank you. I mean, I'm pretty sure if like I did one of those things where people will like swim the English Channel or something like that, like if I could just swim like a straight line a mile and not have to do 8 million flip turns, I'm pretty sure I could do that. I could have done that. Like I would have been able to do that no problem. But it was, man, it is all those flip turns that kill you, y'all. It's just, ugh. You get so dizzy after a while. You're just like, oh, what is life? Summer swim team was like a whole other culture in itself too. And a big part of that was because it was outside. Summer swim teams were all at outdoor pools. And so the big culture for that was instead of claiming your area with like a blanket or a towel, I mean a lot of people still did that anyway, but you were big dog on campus if you had a tent. So all the cool kids had tents. I had a and they're like, just those like little like one person sort of like little cheap camping tent sort of things. And that was important because it helped keep you from getting sunburn and sunstroke and stuff. Because again, you're at a swim meet, so you're there all day out in the blaring sun. It's like 90 degrees outside. You got the sun reflecting off the pools, so it's super bright. And so all the cool kids had tents, and we would hang out in the tents playing Pokemon and listening to music and eating snacks. And oh my God, y'all, the snacks. The snacks. So back when I was a kid on swim team, I ate like a plague of locusts. Like I had to consume so many calories as a kid just to keep up with like the demands of swim team on my body. So I just ate constantly. And bagels are like the swim team food. Like everybody just ate bagels all the time. Like they were just always available at the concession stand. Everybody was always stuffing their face with bagels. And so like bagels and instant like cup of noodles and all that kind of like snacky stuff. Like that's what everybody was eating all day. But heaven help you if you ate candy. Oh my God. If you were one of the good swimmers, because I mean, it's a competition, not to be shady or mean, but there were swimmers that everybody knew they were not very good and they were never going to be very good, and that's okay. They're also there to have fun, which is fine. But then there were also the ones that showed up, put up, and shut up. Like they were the ones, we win all the trophies, basically. Those kids, like, heaven help you if you had candy. Coach would come and just absolutely tan your ass. Just be like, excuse me. Who do you think you are thinking you can eat candy right before an event? And the reason for that was because the sugar would last all of like 2 seconds and then you would crash and you would get tired. And the worst part is your muscles would cramp if you had candy. So that was a huge thing was smuggling candy. Don't let coach see you eating candy, which is also a big part of like the whole tent thing is, it's eating candy in the tent. Like coach can't see me like a bunch of crack addicts or something. You had to time it just right. Make sure that like far enough away from your next event so that coach wouldn't be able to tell that you ate candy and that's why you got time or something. Because how it worked was the points were based on like what place you came in. So like first, second, and third place would earn a certain amount of points. I can't remember what exactly the points were, but I remember third place you get 1 point, and I think second place was probably like about 3 points, and I think first place was like 5 points or something. I could be wrong. I don't know. But the points were kind of like that basically. And then at the end of the swim meet, whichever swim team had the most points, that's who wins. So it is a team effort in that everyone is earning points in order to get the trophy to win, but you also have to win your individual event. And on top of it, you're also competing against yourself, competing against your time. And your time was important because that was what determines which event and stuff you would get placed in. So there were events and then there were also heats for the events. So that meant that, let's say, a swim team has 20 girls in the 15 to 18-year-old age group. Obviously, there's only 7 to 8 lanes in a pool, depending on the pool you're at. You cannot fit 20 girls in one event. So sometimes, depending on how big the swim teams were that were competing against each other, you'd have multiple heats. of the same event. And the better your time was, the later your heat was. So the people that went first were the ones that had the worst times, and then the ones that went last have the better times. And so you're competing against people that are closer to being on your level. So the people you're competing against also have similar times to you. And that sort of thing became very apparent with the community, the private swim team that I did, the fall winter one. With that was a really, really big swim team, and we were ranked really high. And we would do these things called ISI swim meets. And so those weren't just competing against another swim team, that was competing against an entire region of swim teams. So for the weekend, we would actually go out and travel to Notre Dame, the college, Notre Dame in Indiana. We would compete against, I don't remember how many swim teams it was, but it was a lot, y'all. And it was all weekends. Like, that's how many events and heats there were, because it was all weekend. And you would oftentimes just be like bored out of your mind, but you still had to be really careful to make sure that you didn't miss your event, because you're sitting there and you're waiting. There's so many heats and events between your next events. Like, even if like this would never happen, obviously, but let's just pretend for a minute. Even if you were in event number 56 and event number 57, there could still, at an ISI meet, there could be as many as 20 heats in a single event. So you still needed to pay really close attention and make sure that you didn't miss your event just because you're like, oh, they're only on heat 1, I can just dick around, and suddenly they're on heat 19, and you're like, oh, I need to get to the pool side. Because they called it the bullpen area. That's where we would line up. So whoever was next had to be in the bullpen so that you were ready to go. You couldn't just run up to the block last minute. They did not let you do that, because it was, it was dangerous. They don't let you run around a pool. And plus they want to, make sure everybody's organized, ready to get up on the block. They don't need people just like charging at the blocks and, creating chaos and stuff. And then there was the main area where all the blankets and tents and all that stuff was. And oftentimes that was actually far away from the pool. At the ISI meet at Notre Dame, because it was a really big school, they usually had us all in like a gym or a cafeteria or, something like that. So you had to run all the way from whatever place they had you all in to get to the pool. So you're not even in the same area as the pool. So you have to really be paying attention to the loudspeaker to make sure you know what event they're on and have enough time to get there and line up and stuff. So that was like a huge thing. And oh my God, coach would absolutely just chew you out if you missed your event, especially at a big thing like at an ISI meet. Like, just your soul left your body, y'all. You were just like, yep, I'm done. Oh no, I'm in so much trouble. Coach is screaming at me. Like, oh, it was bad. You don't want to miss your event. Don't want to do that, especially if it's your best event. Oh, heaven help you. Like, if I missed a 200 fly, which I never did, but if I did, oh my God, coach would have absolutely just killed me. We're almost done with this freaking tree. This tree is just everything right now. Gotta make sure we leave room to blend, because that's where our dryad is. Okay. I think we've got enough of the tree here, because I'm getting bored of drawing this tree. Let's see. Yes, I like that green. Okay. Gonna start to color her. Mr. J. Ryan, this explains why you are drawing a forest now. I actually didn't think of that, but you are not wrong. You are not wrong. I do like to create very lush scenery in my artwork. The drawing that I just recently completed last week was a scene in like a very beautiful green valley with a bunch of different centaurs and a waterfall and stuff. So not as much plant life as this one, but yeah, I definitely do like to include like flowers and trees and stuff wherever it makes sense in my art. I do enjoy that very much. I also include it a lot in my writing too. I talk about like different environment stuff in my writing. I like to build ecosystems in my worlds. So I am 10 years older than you, dear. Mr. J, no, you did not. Wow. Yes, I did. I did. I was born in 1988, so there you go. And I know I don't look my age. I'm finally at the age where I still look significantly younger than I am, but it's not a problem anymore. I suffered all through my 20s. I would sometimes go out drinking and like restaurants and bars and stuff like straight up did not believe me that I was of age to drink. They all thought I was like somewhere between like 17 and 19 years old, and it was so annoying. So I'm at least finally at the age where people are like, okay, we'll let you drink without like harassing you and like looking at your ID thinking it's fake and like scrutinizing and stuff. So I'm grateful for how old I am now, is that, I don't have to deal with all that nonsense I used to. Yeah, I do remember back when I was 24, that was a really, really crazy part of my life. I was retiring from modeling and going through a divorce all at the same time. That was a very turbulent year for me. Mr. J. Ryan, yeah, people guess I'm 19, 20, and I used to get annoyed always being ID'd, but my mom said I would love it when I'm older. Yeah, but it doesn't really help when you're in it though, because I used to get the same thing. People are like, oh, you'll love it when you get older. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure I will, but it's right now. It's annoying. So I totally feel you there, dear. It sucks, but it gets better, I promise. It gets better, and eventually like you'll pull out your ID and the waiter will be like, "Pfft, I don't need that. Here's your booze." Any advice for my 20s? Let me see. What can I offer you? My life has been a little bit of crazy chaos. I should have guessed you were older for how much life experience you have. Don't even worry about it. Most people like have no idea how old I am, and I'm not one of those people. Like, I don't hide my age or anything. It's just that it's not something you would guess. It's like you, they're absolutely shocked when they find out how old I am. Yeah, advice for your 20s. Well, I guess the biggest piece of advice that I wish I had been given in my 20s, and this is, a big part of my personal journey. I don't know how applicable this will be for you, but, really worry more about yourself and about your career and just, the things that you personally care about in your life. So for me, that was focusing on my modeling career and my writing and my art and stuff like that. So even stuff that's not necessarily like a career, but stuff, maybe that's like a hobby or an interest that you like really care about, put, much more thought and effort and time into that. I spent way too much time trying to chase relationships, and they all ended horribly, unfortunately. Don't be afraid to focus on yourself and really worry about yourself and improving yourself and like seeing how you can really set yourself up for the best success, not just in terms like so many people think success equals money, and that's not necessarily the case. Like, obviously, you need enough money to like pay rent and buy food and stuff like that. It's very important. But a lot of people just think more money equals more success, and that's not necessarily true because you do hit a certain threshold where that saying money doesn't buy happiness comes in, where there's a certain threshold of if you hate what you're doing, it's not going to matter that you're making oodles of money. Make sure that you make time to do the things that you love to do, because that's what really makes life joyful, worthwhile experience, is doing the things that make you happy, whether that's doing an activity or spending time with people you care about or visiting places or eating food that you enjoy. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. Just make sure that you make time for those things, because it's so, so important. And so many people put that off and they're like, "Oh, I'll do that later. Oh, I'll do that when I retire," and da da da. And then later never comes. Or by the time later comes, they're like, "I'm too tired to do that," or "I lost the opportunity to do that," or "I'm not even motivated to do that anymore." So absolutely, in the here and now, make time for the stuff that you care about, because if you don't make the time for it, it won't happen. Later never comes. "Oh, I'll do that tomorrow," never comes. You got to be like, okay, putting it on the calendar, it's happening, committing, doing it. That would be my advice to you, dear. I hope that's helpful. All right. Just kind of getting the base, and I'm going to blend her into the tree so it's not going to stay like this stark green against brown like that. And we got to color in the leaves after we get this color blocking done. That'll be a lot easier to do. Sorry, y'all. I'm like losing my voice here. So confusing for myself, y'all. Trying to figure out where the different colors go with this. Why did I do this to myself? I have made all the choices. This is also going to be complicated to shade, but I'm up for the challenge. Oh, I have a good one. I have a good one, y'all. Okay. Here we go. Growing up, I have always been very close to my cousins on both sides of my family, on my mom's side of the family and on my dad's side of the family. I got to see them on a regular basis. So, like my cousins on my mom's side of the family, I got to see them a few times a year. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but I would spend a huge portion of my summers hanging out on the family farm with my cousins. So even though I didn't get to see them as frequently throughout the year, I got to spend like a really big chunk of my summer with them. So that was always really fun for me growing up. But my dad's side of the family, I was raised where my cousins were basically like my siblings. I got to see them like all the time. It was practically like almost like every other weekend that I got to see them. Sometimes more, especially when we all started to get like into sports and stuff. So we would all go to each other's like sporting events to cheer each other on and stuff. So we got to see each other a lot. So like we hung out together like all the time. And growing up, one of the big things that we would do at the family parties was me and my cousin who was closest to my age. Her name is Rachel. We would play Barbies together. So just to kind of set the scene for y'all so y'all can like understand the logistics of how everything would work. Every house in the family has a basement. And over time, like all the basements went from just being a basement to being like a finished full like rooms and stuff like that. But all of them had basements, and it was because during the family parties, all of the adults would be like cooking food and watching sports and hanging out and just doing boring adult stuff. And all the kids would be told to go play in the basement where we could go scream and be annoying and all that stuff and not bother the adults. And so the big thing was me and Rachel would play Barbies. And because we were kind of like the oldest of the cousins, we had one other cousin, Sarah, who was significantly older than the rest of us. So sometimes she would play with us, but most of the time she wouldn't. So the rest of our cousins were mostly boys. They were kind of forced to be like, well, you either play Barbies with us or you have to go find your own thing to do. And most of the time they didn't really want to find their own thing to do. So usually they just played with us. And it wasn't just like I learned when I got older that the way that we played Barbies was not normal. It's apparently not how everybody else played Barbies, but this is how we played Barbies. Basically, us playing Barbies was kind of like almost like an episode of Jerry Springer. It was always very dramatic and very crazy. There was always a lot of nonsense going on. And basically, how we played it is depending on whose house we were at and like what Barbies we had. It was kind of this setup where it was like this big mansion, and all of us had like different Barbie play sets. So it was kind of different at everybody's house depending on where we were playing. But we would like build this big mansion because we didn't have like the Barbie dream house. We just had all the different play sets with all the different furniture. So we would just have like a designated place where we would like build the mansion with all the different rooms with the furniture and stuff and just kind of played pretend with that. That's not the weird part. That's pretty normal. We had it where it was like this big family that lived in the mansion. And a big part of why we thought that this was kind of normal is because we all grew up playing together and we were a pretty big family because I have, let's see, rate me Al. So all together, me, my little brother, and all my cousins, there were like 8 of us. That's a lot of kids. That's a lot of people all together all the time and stuff. So that just seemed normal to us to have so many adults and so many kids everywhere all the time. So we played it where we had like all of these different Barbies living together where it was the one mom and she had something like 14 kids. So like all the different other Barbies were like all her daughters. And it was just these super soap opera dramatic stories about them and like their boyfriends or husbands and whatever. And then we also had like a million of those Kelly dolls. So like the little baby Barbies. And so like they were always constantly like somebody was always having a baby and it was just I'm sorry, y'all, this is so funny. So um it was very bizarre the way that we played because so the main mom, she had like I can't remember if over the course of all the years we played, if she had 3 husbands or if she had 4 husbands. But she had a bunch of different husbands. The first husband, which was it's real weird, y'all. Like we're about to go to weird places here, just FYI. So the first husbands, we played it where they got divorced because the first husband fell in love with his oldest daughter. And so they got married and had a kid. Real messed up. Real messed up. That was a whole thing. And then the second husband, we called him Crazy Husband. And the reason why we called him Crazy Husband was because he was like one of the like wedding Kens, and he had like real hair. He didn't have like the plastic mold on his head. He had like actual like Barbie hair, and his hair was like super super gelled, and Crazy Husband was my one of my Barbies. I had him. So we could only play Crazy Husband when we were at my house. But he had like this like real hair, and it was super gelled, and because of like, I stored all my Barbies in this big bin, his hair like over time got really really messed up from the way the hair gel was. So it was all spiky and sticking up all crazy all over the place. And so that's why he was Crazy Husband, is because he looked crazy. And he would just like run in, and like the our boy cousins loved being Crazy Husband. That was their favorite. Anytime we played, they would all fight over who got to play being Crazy Husband, and me and Rachel would have to facilitate them taking turns on who got to be Crazy Husband. And he would literally come in, and like they would have him, and they'd just be like, ah, and just like run around and yell and like wave him around and knock stuff over. Like that was his entire reason for being, was just destroying everything. And it was hilarious, and it was great fun. But like we would like tell them in advance like what they were allowed to do and what they weren't allowed to do. We were like, you can't destroy this, you can destroy that, like that's okay. And oh my god, it was so crazy. It was so funny. And a big part of the reason why we loved Crazy Husband so much was around this time period. I think that like Rachel was like watching daytime TV. Like I think she would like see those like daytime TV shows like Judge Judy or something. I think maybe that's where she got this, but we all got really obsessed with court. Like a judge and a jury and all that. We really, really liked like going to court. So that kind of became a new thing with the way that we played Barbies, is we with Crazy Daddy. We really liked going to court. And so we would take crazy husband to court for all sorts of crazy nonsense. And Barbie court basically consisted of just a lot of shouting objection and a lot of gavel banging and all that kind of stuff. So it was just it was nothing like real court at all. It was just absolute nonsense, and calling surprise witnesses and all that stuff. And then eventually the main mom Barbie divorced Crazy Husband. That was a very sad day, because then Crazy Husband didn't happen as often as the boy cousins would have liked. We still kept him around though. He would sometimes just barge in and be crazy and stuff for the sake of do something interesting. But then the third husband that she married, he was like the good husband. So like he wasn't crazy and he wasn't messed up. He was actually like a normal Ken. But then by that time, we played where the mom was a model, and she had to get lots of plastic surgery for her modeling career. So we were always talking about like all the different plastic surgery she was getting and all this stuff. It was really, really ridiculous, y'all. And there was always this drama with the daughter Barbies. So, like, they would then be like going out on dates with their boyfriends, and in between, when the main mom Barbie was like married, when she was single, there would be drama with she would be caught like kissing like their boyfriends and trying to flirt with their boyfriends, and they're like, "No, mom, that's my boyfriend. You can't have him." And just crazy soap opera level nonsense with that. And one of the Barbies, she was always obsessed with, I'm going to run away from home. And we would have her run away for a while, and bad things would happen to her. And then she'd come back to the mansion and she'd be like, I'm sorry, I never want to run away again. Horrible things happened to me. That was such a bad idea. Oh no. But then the next time we played, she would run away again, and more bad things would happen to her. Oh my god. But the absolute funniest thing, oh my god, we still do it. So my one older, he's not older than me. He's younger than me, but my one cousin, one of the older boy cousins, at his house, he had Barbies because of his younger sister. So we would just play with her Barbies. Just, kind of took over. We're like, these are our Barbies because we're older than you and we're here and deal with it. And she kind of really didn't care. She was busy doing stuff with the adults actually. She was more into being in the kitchen and watching sports with the adults and stuff. She didn't really want to play Barbies with us. But it was her Barbies that she had this one Barbie who had really crazy messed up hair. It was like one of those older Barbies where they had like the big curls, like the big perm curls and stuff. So her hair was just like pff. And she had an actual like, the Kraft mac and cheese. Back in the day, there was a mascot for the Kraft mac and cheese. His name was Cheesy Sore. And he was literally like this Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he was bright orange. And I don't know how she got this, but she had a Barbie dress that had Cheesy Sore on the dress. And I don't know why. I can't explain how this phenomena happened. It just happened, where that became the most hilarious thing in the whole world to us. So that particular Barbie was kind of like Crazy Husband, where she would just come in and just like create general chaos and just be crazy and nonsensical and stuff. And her big thing was that she would run in and we would. Sorry, I'm having so hard thinking about this, y'all. Oh my god. Oh, because me and my cousins, if one of us starts up with this, we'll all start doing it and all start yelling it, and the adults hate it. Oh, but it's so much fun. But we'd have her, and we would have her just scream at the top of our lungs. We'd be like, my cheesy sword dress. And it's like all this Barbie cared about was her cheesy sword dress. And so we like had it where a couple times her cheesy sword dress like got stolen, or she thought it was destroyed and it was awful and oh no and drama and whatever. But she would always get it back. And to this day, my older guy cousin, he actually still has the cheesy sword dress. He actually kept it for us because it's just so funny. And we're all like that. We're all a bunch of hyperactive doofuses together. Like we're just horrifically annoying. And if one of us gets started on that, we'll all just start doing it. We'll all just start shouting, "My cheesy sword dress!" And it's just, oh my god, y'all, it is. Oh, it's so funny. And that's kind of like how a lot of our games with playing Barbies kind of went, was it would just devolve into a lot of just like laughing so hard to the point you're like crying and you can't breathe, and just shouting random stuff like that just over and over and over again, like hundreds of times, just because growing up, like even still, I'm an adult and I'm still like this, but we had certain things where it only got funnier the more you said it. So like it's even funnier on the 100th time that you shout it. And another one of the games that we played, it wasn't exclusive to Barbies, but because Barbies was the thing that we played the most, it was usually what we ended up with this particular game. The adults hated this game. They especially hated the other version of this game, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So this game is literally called Make a Mess. That's what the game is called. I bet y'all can guess what the game is. So we would sometimes get so hyper because also at these family parties, they're a big Catholic family. So just tons of food, tons of booze, tons of soda, just tons of everything, just all laid out, the whole party for everybody to enjoy. So there's just tons of soda pop and just tons of just like sugar and stuff. And I'm pretty sure all of us have ADHD. I know I was officially diagnosed with it when I was like 6. I'm pretty sure literally all of us have ADHD, or at least all of us are hyperactive, because once we got the sugar going, once enough of us had like Mountain Dew and stuff, like it was over. It was just like a whole bunch of just like crackheads running around yelling and laughing. But Make a Mess usually happened once we couldn't really actually play with toys anymore in any sort of like human fashion. We were no longer capable of making any sense. And at that point, we would start singing, "Make a mess, make a mess, make a mess, make a mess, make a mess," and just that over and over, just that on repeat for however long we played the game for. There is no way to win. There is no actual end to the game. It's pretty much we would just play the game until one of the adults found us and finally yelled at us to stop. But the goal of the game is to make as much of a mess as possible. And so oftentimes that meant that went from like playing Barbies and having like the little mansion set up to just Picking up toys and just like throwing them in the air, throwing them and taking more bins of toys and just dumping them out and just making the mess bigger while singing the song. And don't get me wrong, we weren't like so incredibly horrible. We knew that we eventually, before we all had to go home, that we all had to clean up the mess. That was a given. That was 100% going to happen. Like we never were like, okay, we left the family party and like giant mess is here. No, that was literally never allowed ever. We all knew that eventually make a mess had to come to an end and we had to clean up the mess, which sucked, but we always had to do that. So we were not that horrible of children. We were pretty horrible, but we weren't that horrible. Yeah, Make a Mess was one of our favorite games, and our all-time favorite version of Make a Mess was, so I don't know how many of y'all grew up with these like very, very classic games, but there's a whole series of them and they all come, well, I don't know about now, but they back in the day came in all these boxes and they kind of looked the same. My one cousin, again, the boy cousin, he had literally all of those games. He had all of them. And then also in the 90s, there was this one game. All of us had this game, but it was more important that it was at his house because he also had all those other games. I think it was called Crazy Crab. And it was basically like you get this little like playing like ring, and there's all these different colored like balls, like these little pearls that you have to like scoop up in the game. And then there's this big plastic crab and it vibrates. So you turn it on and it like blah, like all around this little ring, and it makes it harder for you to be able to like scoop up the pearls, and you're supposed to get like your color of pearls in order to win. So the reason why all of this is important is because our favorite version of Make a Mess was we would get out literally all of these games, all of them. And the crab game was the most important piece of this part of the game. We would get out all these games and we would put them in a giant pile. So we wouldn't even like put the games actually together in order to like, assemble it to play the actual game. We just put them all in a giant pile. And so because a lot of these games had like a lot of different parts, like a lot of different little like pieces, like little beans and little ice cubes and like, lots of little things that can go flying. And then we'd put on top of this pile the crab, and then we would turn it on. I'm sorry, I'm just, oh my god. I just remember this and it's hysterical. It's horrible. It is horrible. Absolutely horrible, but it was hysterical. Oh my god, I'm crying. Uh, but I turn on the crab and it would just send all of the stuff just shooting everywhere, just pew pew pew, just like shooting all over the floor and just like popping up like popcorn, all these things, and it's just like brrr, over this giant pile of random stuff, and it would make the biggest mess. It was horrible to clean up, and like all the little balls and stuff would go flying and like roll under stuff, and we'd have to go hunting for them later. I'm pretty sure all those games are missing a ton of pieces now because we would do that, but we would just be literally screeching with laughter when we would do that, and I know like the adults could hear it. Like, they knew once it reached that level, like, "Oh, no, they're destroying the house now." Like, we would reach that level of destroying the house and being crazy. Like, it was full on pterodactyl screeching, laughing at that point. Oh my god, we had way too much fun doing Make a Mess. That was probably, like, one of the worst games that we would play. And it happened a lot. It happened a lot, y'all. That was definitely a game that happened quite frequently. That was not like a one-time thing. Oh my god, y'all. We were weird kids. The things that we came up with that we decided were fun. I don't even know. I don't really have an explanation for it, y'all. It's just the way we were. I know like, kids do weird stuff and they play weird games, but I think we really took the cake for being weird. And I think a part of that is also just because we saw each other so, so much. So it wasn't like special when we would hang out. Like it was such like a regular thing that like we would like plan what we were going to do like the next time we hung out. So and so would be responsible for bringing this thing and so would be responsible for bringing that thing. Like we could like plan this stuff because we saw each other regularly. I think that's part of how a lot of these games we played evolved too. Because we saw each other so much, we were able to kind of just like evolve all these sort of things that we would do together. Whereas I know a lot of people, seeing your cousin is not really like a regular thing that you do. It's not like you're going to be like, okay, a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever, everybody remember this is what we're going to do. I know that that's not quite like a regular thing for most people. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But I think the other part of it was I think we were all just really weird too. I think we were all just a little bit out there was really a big part of it too. We were all a little bit weird kids. And we were always getting into trouble. We were always doing ridiculous stuff. Like I'm pretty sure our poor parents. I'm pretty sure we took years off our parents' lives. I kind of feel bad for them, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, just all of the crazy nonsense that we would do, y'all. It was way too much fun. We had so much fun with that stuff. That's the other thing is that all of us live by, we call it the cousin code. You don't break the cousin code. There are certain rules and there are certain stories that I can't publicly talk about because of the cousin code, because even to this day, I'm pretty sure some of those stories would still get some of us in trouble. So, gotta on that for the cousin code. This drawing is coming along really well. I am so excited for it, y'all. We've already accomplished a lot, especially because I'm having to color a lot of stuff by hand just because of the way I'm going to shade stuff. I can't like fully do line art on everything. So I'm having to hand color stuff, but we're making a lot of progress. I'm really excited for this. It'll look a lot better when I shade it, I promise. It'll make a lot more sense when I shade it. For now, we're doing color blocking, so everything looks a little bit wonky just because it's all solid colors and random line art. Shading always makes everything come to life. That's where the real magic happens. I love shading, y'all. I think I need that. That is what we need. And I do still need like the defined lines of like, even though I'm doing a lot of shading work where I'm going to be, crossing a lot of the line art, I still want to have this kind of loosey-goosey feel, but the line art is still necessary because I do need those hard edge lines in some places just to establish structure. Okay, so this is where we're at, y'all. I'll kind of zoom in on this part. There we go. So it is 9 o'clock, y'all. Oh my god, we got so much done today. I know it kind of doesn't look like it because it's just like most of the tree and a little bit of the dryad colored, but there was just so much we had to do by hand, so that kind of slowed us down a bit. I want to thank y'all so much for tuning in tonight. I hope y'all enjoyed watching me draw and listening to me babble on about all different kinds of stories. So, as always, be sure to follow and turn on notifications so you know when it's time to play. Oh, I love y'all so much. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. And if y'all are in a different time zone, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. For the rest of y'all, I hope you have a wonderful night. Stay safe and tune in next time. See you later. Bye bye.